All right, guys, we are back with another Real Talk episode. Today, we're going to be talking about the M110A1, also known as the SDMR or the CSAS. SDMR standing for Squad Designated Marksman's Rifle, and the CSAS is the Compact Semi-Auto Sniper System. And this is the civilian version, obviously. But today, I wanted to talk about the importance of having the capabilities of a DMR in your squad, or if you're training with a group of guys, why it is important to have at least one guy who has the ability to reach out and bridge the gap between a sniper system, past 600 yards, and this guy is meant to bridge that gap between the 300-yard limitations of the carbine and the 600-yard starting point of a sniper, so to speak. So, and these are ranges that the military has designated. These aren't coming from me. As you guys all know, I've shot this thing out to 1,000 yards. But before we get into all that, I want to talk about the history a little bit about kind of where this thing began, where it sits today, and then also kind of moving forward into the future if it has a place in our U.S. military and who's going to be using it. So let me just full disclosure, I don't know a ton about the subject. I'm a dirty civilian, so I've never served in the military, but I've done a lot of research on this guy right here in particular because I always loved HK rifles, and when they came out with this, I just wanted one for the longest time. So I finally have my version of the M110A1. Speaking of the M110, we have the Palmetto State M110 clone back here, which we did a video on recently. This is the Palmetto State's version of the Knights Armament M110 semi-auto sniper system that originally won the contract and that the HK eventually replaced, but now it may be getting replaced again by the M110A2, which is the same thing as this guy, but with a few upgrades like an M-LOK rail and chambered in 6.5 Creedmoor, I do believe, and a few other features like an adjustable stock and things like that. But I wanted to talk to you guys today about the importance of having capabilities of a DMR and kind of my mindset. As you guys can tell, I have a few options back here behind me on the wall that are also good options, but this one is in particular is kind of being fielded right now by the U.S. Marines and some other soft groups and the Army and whatnot. So Army Rangers, there's, again, I don't know everybody who's using it, but I know that HK had a $43 million contract, I believe it was, that got extended, and a lot more money was allocated. I think another $33 million towards these rifles, and then I think they're actually going a different direction with the remainder of that, like a $12 million remainder. But you guys can research that on your own if you're really interested. But I want to talk to you guys primarily about why is it important. So first things first, we need to discuss the idea of training with a squad or training with a group of guys. So if you don't already have a group of guys that you can go train with, I highly encourage you guys to try to find like-minded individuals. I know it's tough in today's day and age, but more people than you realize are probably into guns. Maybe not the level that we are, but at any level, and you may be able to encourage them to get further into it, so to speak. So it doesn't matter if you're Rambo. This isn't Hollywood, so if you're running, if there's any type of situation where you actually need to defend your life from tyranny, foreign or domestic, if you're a one-man crew, you're going to be dead pretty quick. So, and everyone will tell you that from the most trained guys in the world. There's a reason SEALs run in teams. There's a reason Delta has a squad. It's because even these guys are the most top tier operators on the planet, and they have guys with them because it doesn't matter how good you are, you're better in numbers. So with that being said, it has been a goal of mine this year to really try to get out there more and train with guys who are like-minded, who can actually, help me to improve, and not only just help me to improve, but also can perform a role that they can specialize in one role and I can specialize in another, right? So whatever their capabilities are, whatever their strengths are, we can kind of work with each other and play to each other's strengths and abilities and stuff. So with that being said, guys, why was the Army looking for something? Because as we all know, the M4 carbine is a 14.5 inch AR-15 chambered in 5.56. So the Army was looking for something to bridge the gap between the AR-15, the 14.5, and the sniper rifle, which is really for extended ranges. And they wanted something that wouldn't stick out amongst the squad and still be able, relatively lightweight and maneuverable enough to be able to move, in and around buildings and whatnot, because snipers are targeted by the enemy. If the enemy sees a sniper, they're going to really target the sniper because the sniper has a capability to, again, reach out and touch something from far away. So a guy who is equipped with something like this doesn't stick out as much as somebody who's carrying a bolt action rifle, for instance, or a longer, more obvious sniper platform. This kind of fits in, and it replaced the M110 because it also brought the weight down, I believe, from 15 pounds to around 10, 11 pounds. Again, don't quote me on the exact figures, but it shaved a bunch of weight off. It added the ability to have an adjustable stock, and obviously there's different configurations. This is nowhere near clone correct, so there are a few clone correct parts on here, but I'm not claiming this to be clone correct. And the only missing part, I know I'm getting ahead of myself here, but we're missing the Huxworks flow through 762 Ti on here, which isn't the exact clone correct can, but again, I'm not going for clone correct. I'm going for something that is the most effective for me. So I guess before we go any further into the application and what this thing shoots like and the history, I pretty much covered all the history. Let's just talk about the setup and what I have on this thing, because I know a lot of you guys are wondering exactly what I do have on here. So let me actually lift this thing back up so you guys can see it a little bit better. Starting at the front, I already kind of gave it away. We have the Huxworks Flow 762 muzzle device. I keep a flash hider on here because all my guns come with flash hiders, or they don't come with flash hiders, rather. I put flash hiders on all my guns because any type of real world scenario where I'm going to be shooting this thing, if it's at night, I don't want to project my location. I know going to be running with a can. Once I get my can, I'm never going to take it off because why would I? It's a super lightweight can. But with that being said, I just like flash hiders. So if anything were to happen to the can for any reason I didn't have the can on the gun, I want to minimize the flash as much as possible at night and not project my location in that way. So that's that up front. We have the Magpul bipod up front. It's M-LOK directly attached to the HK 417 rail. This is a 14.5-inch rail in their desert dirt color. We have some Magpul M-Bus backup iron sights on the side on the offset, 45-degree offset iron sights. So if anything were to happen with the main optic, or I was really up close and personal, I'd probably resort to these backup irons on the offsets here. I do have a HRT Tactical AWLS. This is the Advanced Weapon Light Systems. That's what they call it. It did come with an omnidirectional switch from Valhalla Tactical, but it has a tendency to allow you to ND on accident your white light. So I actually just took it off, and there's a regular tail cap on here where you can half press or full click for constant on. Really great light. On a DMR like this, you're going to want a light that has a high candela because the capability of this rifle, I've shot this 2,000 yards. I would say all day long, it meets the military's requirements of 300 to 600 yards. And this light can throw for about 600 meters. So you want a high candela. This is 90,000 candela on this guy. There's a lot of good lights out there that have high candela. Surefires came out with their version. The Rain 3.0 also has 100,000 candela. So there's some, the industry is moving towards high candela, and it's great for DMRs because if for any reason you're going to white light and you need to light something up at distance, you're going to want to make sure you have a light to match the capabilities of your rifle. So that's pretty cool. Now moving back from there, we just have a Daniel Defense grippy pick rail cover on the top here, some cheap BCM M-LOK rail covers in here, and then we have a two rail scales on the side. I really love rail scales, and they just look great and they feel great. These are not the fancy G10 ones, these are just the high temp polymer. Down below we have the Troy vertical grip with a little Magpul Picatinny to M-LOK, M-LOK to Picatinny section here with the Troy vertical grip in the shorty configuration. Love that. There's storage in the bottom, O-ring sealed, so you have any batteries, anything you want to put in there, matches you can put in there, and they'll stay dry, which is really cool. We got the MDT Arca Swiss little short section here, like a 3.5-inch section on the Foxtrot ball head. Zero Fox Given, not Foxtrot. Zero Fox Given ball head and the Death Grip tripod that we're using to show it off right here. Moving back from there, we have the just the Blue Force Vickers sling. Free Larry Vickers, shot him out. Travesty what's going on with that guy, but love his slings, love Blue Force gear slings, and I've never actually owned another sling because I got these to start and they're phenomenal, so I just stuck with them. Going back from there, on the lower, we'll stick with the lower because the upper is all mil or stock what it came with. We have stock charging handle, stock BCG, which is proprietary, and then we have regular HK 20 round mags, and then in the lower we do have a Geisley two-stage HK MR 762 trigger. I wish it was full auto. It's not. Thanks ATF. We have a B5 trigger guard here, a HK, this is their RAL 8000. I don't know what they call this, the A5 grip. It's one of their grips. I forget which variation it is. And then just the stock it came with these absolutely atrocious sling loops on the back. I hate these things. I run my sling right down to the bottom here, so I'm actually going to Dremel these off eventually. I do have a Walter Sobchak security little like cheat sheet they call it, I believe. In the back gives you some average sizes of some things you might see out in the wild, so you can mill things. It gives you the actual equation for milling, as well as some like wind values as well, like depending on the direction of the wind. So that's pretty cool. Cool little reference sheet there. And I do have some of their caps that allow you to put your dope in there, but they don't stick in these ADM ones, so I have to do some modifications to get them to work. But that is about it besides the optic, which we'll talk about next. That's the EOTech Voodoo 5-25 first focal plane with a Horus Trimmer 3 reticle in it. We have it in a Badger Condition 1 mount on the 1.7 inch height. And it's a 1.7, but it's also the HK risers, or sorry, the HK top upper receiver rather, is a little bit higher than a mil spec upper receiver because it's got that short stroke gas piston system. So it's got a little swoop up here in the back. So it already sits a little bit higher compared to your cheek weld. And then that takes it a little bit higher, but it's not too high. It's nothing that's uncomfortable. On a precision type setup like this, you don't want a super high mount. Some guys would even say they want an 1.5 inch, 1.5 inch mount, but this is good for me. I really do enjoy this height, and it works great. So I am running, lastly, the Adamount scope caps on here. And this is the anti-reflection device in the front. And it gives you a little bit of glare protection if someone's shining light at you or in the middle of the day, you don't want to give away your location. And then in the back, these things are absolutely airtight. They're waterproof, fog-proof. They are loud in the open, I'll say that. Came with little foam pieces. I got to put one in there for the back cap. The front one does have it. So you guys can hear just how much it deadens it down, but still something to be cognizant about. But that's going to be pretty much it for the build, guys. Back to capabilities and what this thing can do. This thing is an absolutely nail driver. It's a tack driver. It's sub MOA at 100 yards with the Federal Sierra Gold Medal Match King, 168 grain, boat tail hollow point. That's what this thing really likes. I've printed a bunch of different ammunition types with it. That is this gun's favorite ammunition. So with that ammunition, we were able to factory ammunition go out to 1,000 yards out at RPR and hit semi-consistently. The wind is pretty wild on 308 at that distance. Once you start getting past 800 yards with a 16-inch 308, it starts to get very much influenced by the wind, and there's a ton of wind out there. But we're still able to get hits, and it's not like 1 out of 10. We're getting 6 or 7 out of 10, which is pretty darn good at a man-sized target at 1,000 yards. So man-sized target wasn't anything crazy big. It was like I think 16 inches by 24 inches, something like that. So really good accuracy out to 1,000 yards. And obviously, the military believes this is going to bridge the gap for the 300 to 600 yard range. It can do that all day long, absolutely. Now, the way I have this thing kitted out right now, it is a pretty heavy boy. I'm not going to lie to you guys. It is not the lightest setup I've ever owned, obviously. And there's some other options that for regular people, because this gun is actually very expensive. For those of you who don't know, stock, when it comes out of the box, it's very expensive. It's like $4K just to get the base rifle. Obviously not including any of the optics or attachments, but just the Geisley rail and the Geisley trigger are two, almost $1,000 upgrades once you add them up. The Geisley trigger, I think, is like $400 and something, $450, and the rail is about the same. So it's up there for the upgrades, but there are some cheaper options out there for you guys who are looking into getting something that is capable of packing a punch at 300 to 600 yards, or in my opinion, this is a 300 to 800 yard gun all day. But if you want to get something that's going to do the same thing, maybe a little bit lighter weight, maybe a little bit much cheaper actually. But again, short stroke gas piston system. People could argue in the comments all day long about why that's good or bad. I bought into the hype. I just love the rifle. I'm not going to lie to you, but do I regret buying this thing? Absolutely not. Now, my HK MR 5.56, I do have a few regrets with that gun because DI 5.56 guns are so good. And again, it's not to say that DI 308 guns aren't that good, but that rifle has seen very little use in recent months because I've had my URGI and just other rifles that are super lightweight, just as accurate, maybe not just as accurate. It's a very accurate gun, but then again, it's just a very heavy gun, especially in the front end for what it is. So I'm not knocking it. I just don't think I would buy that gun again. This gun I absolutely adore and I love, but let's talk about a few options here that if you don't have, this whole setup's running pretty heavy price tag. If you don't have that kind of cash flow, which most people do not, and don't get me wrong, I paid on this for quite a few months on layaway to get it, but now that I have it, I'm very happy with it. But it's a dream rifle of mine. Let's just talk about a few other options that you may want to consider that may be good for the same task. So obviously we have the SCAR 17 up here. Let's just talk about the SCAR real quick, because the SCAR was developed for a different military contract, and it's considered a battle rifle, not a DMR, but a lot of people use the SCAR 17 as a DMR. The difference is going to be, and also it must be noted that the actual HK SDMR or the CSAS M110A1 for the military has a chrome line barrel where the civilian versions do not. That does increase the accuracy, but again, that's just something you guys should note, because the SCAR 17 from FN comes with a chrome line barrel. Now, the SCAR 17 has phenomenal accuracy for not being advertised as a accurized, it's not supposed to be a tack driver DMR. It's a battle rifle, but it has phenomenal accuracy. With that same 168 grain Federal Gold Medal Match King, I'm getting about 1 to 1.5 inch groups at 100 yards, which again is plenty good for combat accuracy, and it makes me very happy. So this is another option that is relatively on the lightweight side. It's definitely much lighter weight than my HK here, because the optic setup is a little different, and it's a little bit running a little slimmer on here. Also have the HRT AWLS on here. Got the Sandman K up front. I have an adjustable gas bucket here because it is a requirement for this SCAR in order to cycle properly and not damage your rear receiver plate here. Full disclaimer, I was running a Connect Development Group stock on here, which has an aluminum back plate, so that may have also expedited the wear and tear I had on my rear receiver plate. But this thing is highly upgraded. We've talked about this on the channel a ton. This is the non-reciprocating charging handle version. We have a Connect Development Group radiant selector switch, Geisley trigger, Magpul K2 grip, which I had to modify my lower to get that to work. I have the regular UGG boot on here, a Trijicon Credo 1-8 up top, and then we have a Connect Development Group MREX Mark II up front, Mototech Engineering adjustable gas block, AWS Advanced Weapon Light, 90,000 Candela, and then Dead Air Sandman K that lives on there. Some rail scales as well, and that's pretty much it. Sitting in an ADM mount. Also the Atom mount scope cap. So this is going to run you just about as much as the HK is. So that's a bad example of something that you can get into for relatively cheap. Now the best option, the cheapest option, is going to be something like this. This is my modernized Mark 12, and I love this rifle because it's one of the funnest rifles I have to shoot. Super soft recoiling, but the reason I say this is one of the best options is because you can actually just build this upper receiver and put it on whatever lower you have, because most likely you already have an AR-15 lower, and this is an 18-inch barrel chambered in 5.56. I have the Otter Creek Labs OCM5 up front, Ballistic Advantage 18-inch stainless steel OpSync profile barrel, Geisley rail, BCM charging handle, Law Tactical folder. We have the Gasbuster charging handle, a cheap Primary Arms SLX scope, but it's probably one of my favorite scopes ever. It's amazing. ADM mount, radiant selector, Geisley trigger, Silencer Co. Ambi lower, Reptila CQG grip, and a V5 SOP mod stock. But the reason I say this is because you can actually just build the upper. You're probably going to still spend, if you want good components, you want a Geisley rail, you could definitely do it for cheaper than this. But if you wanted this exact setup, it's probably going to run you, not including the optic, just the upper, not including the suppressor either, probably around like $1,400, I would guess, maybe less. Maybe less, actually, maybe like $1,200, because the barrel is not very expensive. It's a Geisley gas block, Rifle Link gas system. I do have a regular mil-spec buffer tube on here, but just the upper, you can build something like this. Doesn't have to be these exact specs or these exact parts, and get in the game for much cheaper. And this gun is absolutely good all day out to 600 yards. Now, it's not going to have as much impact or energy on target when it gets there, and it's going to be more affected by the wind than something like a 308, but it's a way to maintain caliber consistency and also stay on the relatively cheap side versus going the $6,000 minimum route once you get glass on it. So that's the option I give to most everybody, friends and family wise, who's actually just like getting into guns and who wants to start shooting long range. I'm like, just build you a nice 5.56 upper. and you're going to be good out to 600 yards all day long. This thing can actually go further than that with some good bullets, some 77 grain OTM bullets. It's going to go pretty far. It's really accurate. Also sub MOA gun. I love this thing. But if you want to have the ass when you get there, then the options are AR-10 mostly. I mean, 6.5 Creedmoor. This is the Saber from Palmetto State, which we already talked about a little bit. This is chambered in 6.5 Creedmoor. If I had to do it all over again, this would probably be like, I'd probably replace my Aero Precision 308 with this guy. This is a 20-inch barrel in 6.5. It's phenomenally accurate from what I've seen already. I'm just super impressed with how light it is, how light it recoils. And with a 20-inch 6.5, I mean, you're going to be good out to 1,000 yards all day long. So I really am loving this thing. It's also got a primary arms scope on it. Pretty cheap, $300 scope, but works really well. Radiant selector switch. It's got a Geisley clone in it, trigger. That's the only thing I can describe it as because it feels exactly like a Geisley trigger. Magpul bipod, adjustable gas block. Actually, the HK muzzle device on here just to protect the threads because, yeah, don't want to damage the threads up. And this is a buddy's rifle he's letting me borrow for a review. Radiant charging handle. We have like a chromed BCG up front. And yeah, it's just pretty great. Comes with P-Mags, came with a Savior bag, came with a bipod and three P-Mags, and also A2 stock, which is a little loose, which we talked about in the review of this guy. But this is a really cool option because for 1,500 bucks, you get this rifle, the bipod, the mags, and all its capabilities, radiant selector, all this stuff, and the bag as well for $1,500. Really great option for what not even the scope on my HK cost. So if someone is budget conscious and they want to get into it, that's a great option. Another great option back here is the Aero Precision. Again, nothing against the Aero Precision. I'd probably change out the PRS stock on it. I got a Magpul Gen 3 PRS stock on it, but it is super heavy and it just makes me not want to run and gun with it. Especially because, again, the idea of a DMR or an SDMR, one guy in your squad having a DMR is to still be able to maneuver, clear rooms, run with the squad still. And when you get into 18-inch barrels or even that 20-inch barrel, it gets a little bit more difficult to maneuver. And the heavier the gun gets, you know, keep that in mind as well. I know I have a 5-25 on here, so it's not exactly what the military had in mind for their SDMR. They actually have the Sig Tango, I believe it is, 1-6. Maybe it's a 1-8. I can't remember on their actual SDMRs, but obviously I have a little bit of a higher magnification on here. This guy also has a 5-25. This is the Aero Precision AEM5. It is their like kind of, it's not a monolithic upper, but the barrel nut is one piece with the upper receiver group. And it's got a ballistic advantage 18-inch stainless steel profile barrel. It's fluted, silencer, or sorry, dead air, Sandman S up front. This was my first kind of attempt at a DMR. Magpul stock in the back. This thing is super heavy. I definitely want to change this out for one of the B5 systems. I have a Radiant LT charging handle, Radiant selector switch in the 45, Rise Armament RA140 trigger, and then Aero Precision BCG, nickel boron coated, Warren mount, and the Vortex Strike Eagle 5-25 first focal plane with their EVR 2C reticle, I believe it is. And this thing is a 1,000-yard gun as well. Great little rifle, but it's heavy. And I mean, all these are heavy, but it's super long. And if I had to do it all over again, I'd probably put a 6.5 Creedmoor barrel in this thing, just because of how much better the ballistic coefficient is on 6.5 Creedmoor. I think that's the reason the military is also going to that with the Knights M110A2. And again, I love this rifle. It's a super accurate rifle, but it is very long. It is very heavy. This guy is very heavy, but it is a lot shorter, a lot more maneuverable. And especially once you put a can on there, I mean, it just makes this thing absolutely ridiculously long. I mean, so yeah, same with the M110 clone here, but from Palmetto State Armory. So it's just things to consider if you're planning on like running and gunning with a squad. Maybe you want to go with a 16-inch 308 or 6.5. I'm not a ballistic head, so somebody can let me know down in the comments if 6.5 is even good out of a 16-inch barrel, or if it's better than 308 out of a 16-inch barrel. Let's put it that way. But that's pretty much the idea behind it, is to stay maneuverable so you can still run and clear buildings with the guys you're running with, But then if you do need to take an engagement, take a shot more precisely out past 3, 4, 5, or 600 yards, you can do that with something like this. Absolutely, especially with a reticle like the Horus Trimmer 3. And most of these reticles nowadays are coming with the wind holds and the drops and whatnot. So you just need to know what your bullet does with your rifle and with your scope and how it all lines up. So that's where training comes in, guys. And that's the main thing. You could have the most expensive rifle in the world and still get shot in the face by a guy with a 30-year-old AK and zero training whatsoever if you don't know what you're doing and if you don't know how to use your equipment and your tools and use your body position and communicate with your team. So these are all things that I'm working on. So I encourage you guys to work on those as well. And yeah, just please spread the word and bring more people into the community if you can. Get a guy who's like kind of serious or who talks about firearms with you every once in a while and invite him to the range and start training with them. That's what we need to do, guys. We need to continue to build this community and bring people up and not make people feel intimidated or anything like that. Because at the end of the day, we're going to need each other if anything ever goes down. So that being said, if you guys like the channel, you want to support the channel, there's 4 ways you can do so. There is a super thanks, which is like Patreon, but right here on YouTube. So that's right below the video and right above the video description. Then we have Brownell's discount code RDB10 that saves you 10% off at Brownell's. Also, we have that's over orders of $150 or more. And then also we have rangedaybro.com for merch. And then lastly, just liking, commenting, subscribing. But that's going to be it, guys. I have a flight early in the morning tomorrow, so I'm going to cut this one short. Thank you guys so much for everything. Love you guys. Talk to you soon.